What's up, everybody? Welcome here to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm your host for today's festivities, Rockin Robbie Billups, and we like to have these creator conversations, and there's nothing quite like meeting somebody for the first time who has been working in the world of comic books, movies, things like that, meeting them, having them on the channel, and having a nice conversation. The only thing better than that is having them on for a second time, because now we got the rapport. Now we're ready to get into it. So let's bring in a writer who has worked in comics. He has worked in film. He is an incredible writer. He's got a very solid history of work. He's got some very exciting projects in the works right now and for the future and back in the past, if you want to call it that. Let's welcome David Avallone. What's up, homie?
Thank you, Robbie. That was all very, very nice.
Well, you deserve it, bro. Thank you for coming to join us for a second time for a conversation, man.
Of course. First one was great.
All right, so we're going to be talking about your latest project over at Dynamite that's about to release, which is Giant-Sized Savage Tales, which is your latest in a series of anthology one-shots where you do like short stories based on some of the ladies of Dynamite, right?
Yes, and some of the boys as well. And it's a funny thing because it's, Savage Tales is supposed to be an anthology book with multiple teams on it. And when I did my first one, I think I did 2 out of the 4 stories. And we have moved up to, the last one was 3 out of the 4 stories. And now it's all Avallone all the time. It's 3 different artists who are great. Mariano is drawing 2 of them. Pasquale Qualino is drawing 1, and Sebastian Perez is drawing the 4th. And all great artists who bring something really special to the work.
Well, at this point, I think they might as well call it Savage Avallone Tales. What do you think?
Exactly. Avallone Savage Tales. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I crept into that role. And the last time when I did 3, the 4th one was a reprint of an old Kurt Busiek story, which was great. An old Kurt Busiek Vampirella, I think it was Vampirella. But yeah, I'm happy to do it. I love writing the old pulp characters. Some of these go back to the 2 male characters go back to the 19th century, to the late 19th century, and that's always an interesting challenge. And the ladies are, Red Sonja was created by Robert E. Howard in the 20s or 30s. I can't remember which, but the Red Sonja that's in comic books was created by Roy Thomas and a female writer whose name escapes me right now, who really crafted her into the comic book character that she is. Because she was very different in the Robert E. Howard novels. And, instead, I think they responded to a prompt from Stan Lee that was something like, "We need Lady Conan." So, they took Robert E. Howard's rebellious 14th century nun and changed her into something completely different.
I like your Stan Lee impression. It sounds like it would be very accurate, actually.
It's, I developed the Stan Lee impression because every time people ask me about the Marvel style of writing comics, I feel that it's necessary to do a Stan Lee impression. I always say, the Marvel style of writing comics is Stan stops Jack in the hallway and goes, "Next time they encounter this big dude who eats planets in Galactus, 24 pages." That's the, that's the writing of that issue of Fantastic Four. "Who's this guy on the surfboard? He looks fantastic." I've never seen this guy before. "Well, I think he needs to have a herald of some kind." "That's awesome, Jack." We're not paying anything extra.
That's why we get along. In order to make it even more perfect for everybody, you just got to throw in a true believer there every once in a while, like kayfabe it in,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he used that in his common everyday vernacular.
Yeah.
Talking
Exactly. Face front, Jack.
True believer.
You're a friend of old Marvel, But yeah, I grew up with Stan. So, in spite of all of the stories about him one way or another, I do not have a black and white view of Stan. I think he was a very complicated cat, and he did a lot of great things, and he also kind of blew his own horn a little too loud. But I also think he kept comic books alive and created the idea. I think Stan, in some ways, was the first guy in comics to make himself the star of comics. to make himself a personality instead of it just being, there's all these anonymous guys. I don't know anything about their personalities. I have no idea what they look like, what they sound like. I just know I like their writing or I like their art. And Stan was the face of literally all of them. And, not to go off on a thing about Stan, but that's, he was a champion in the medium, even during very dark times when comic book movies were not very good.
Yes. He was still telling you how great that Captain America movie was going to be. You know what I'm saying? But no, I love what you say because I feel the same way, man. Stan Lee is who he is, and we can, you can look into the history and see tons of stuff and dive into it. But I love what you said. Not everybody is one thing. Not everybody is. It's not just black and white.
Look, I'm as big a fan of Jack Kirby as is on this planet. I love Jack Kirby. He changed how I write. He was he's still a huge inspiration to me every day. In a way that Stan the writer is not actually an inspiration to me. I prefer all Jack all the time. I think when Jack writes Jack, it's got an unhinged quality that goes with Jack's art perfectly. Like so Stan is right? I'm a huge Stan at Jack at DC is my favorite Jack. I'm at OMAC and Commandy and all, like, I love that stuff. That's my favorite Jack, because to me that's Jack unbound. That's Jack doing whatever he wants to do, and that's great. Stan the writer I'm not like a huge fan of, but Stan the relentless self-promoter who understood that the reader wants a parasocial relationship, though he certainly wouldn't use that word. He invented the parasocial relationship in comic books. He invented I'm the editor-in-chief of this company, I'm also your best pal. And I share things with you and I talk to you, and he was the way into that. So, like, for a lot of people, loving Jack Kirby requires them to think that Stan Lee is the devil, and Jack Kirby didn't even believe that Stan Lee was the devil. So why should you? You know what I mean? Like, why should you be angrier at him than Jack was? That doesn't seem appropriate to me.
I love that you say that, because I get that a lot. Like, the moment I started becoming a Jack Kirby fan, I did feel that. I felt that pressure to oh man, I found out all these things about their relationship and who did what, and maybe Jack got less credit than he deserves. And then you listen to that interview on the radio where Jack Kirby's on there celebrating his birthday. Stan calls in, they get in a little bit of an argument, and you want to feel for Jack, and I understand that. But man, there is something, because you look at Jack working on his own or working with other people outside of Stan, and then look at Stan working outside of his collaboration with Jack. There is something magical about that Stan and Jack thing. Like, John Lennon, great musician, so is Paul McCartney, but when they worked together with George Harrison and Ringo Starr, the Beatles transcended what they did individually, right?
Absolutely. And that is the magic of collaboration. And also, one of the great things about the comic book industry is that it's so small, and the community is so small, and in some ways it is so welcoming. Now, and I will, put in the codicil that I am, of course, a middle-aged, shading towards old white man. So, like, I am more welcome in certain rooms than other people are. But, I've made friends before he turned MAGA. I was friends with Steranko, and I'm friends with Don McGregor. And those guys tell great stories about Stan Lee that are not negative. You know what I mean? So I have plenty of friends in common with Stan Lee who also don't hate him. And that allows me to have a more three-dimensional picture of him in my mind. You know what I mean? Like, he's not just the one thing.
Have you read the graphic novel I Am Stan by Tom Scioli by any chance?
I have not. I've been meaning to pick that up because I am obviously interested in it.
Yeah, it's really good, man. And I think it's a very fair and balanced and slightly inspirational look at the life of Stan, especially as it comes to comic books. All right, but let's go outside of comic books for a while. Last time we talked a little bit about movies, and you've been working not just in comics for a long time, but you've been working in movies for a long time. Oh, yeah. And I want to know, what was it that made you fall in love with movies?
I can actually pinpoint that. My dad was born in 1924, grew up in the Great Depression in a family with 17 kids. And it's probably easy for you to imagine how much parental attention a kid gets when he has 16 siblings. I mean, some of them are obviously born after him, but like he has a minimum of 7 siblings, when he's born. And then there's another one every couple of years or every year after that. So he was very much raised by Hollywood's output in the 1930s. And then he raised me very much on that same output because he loved these things and he wanted to share them with me. And the real moment, I was in grade school. I can't remember how old I was. Probably 6 or 7, probably first or second grade. And the local, one of the local syndicated stations, WOR New York, when I grew up in Jersey, got the rights to show King Kong. And they were 1933 King Kong, obviously. There was no other King Kong at the time. And they were so out of their mind excited about it, they showed it twice a day for 5 days. And my father was so in love with that movie that he actually had me stay home from school one day to watch it. So I played hooky with my dad and saw 1933 King Kong. And it, blew my mind. Nothing, I had never seen anything that looked like that. Like all 5-year-olds in the early 70s and probably to the present day, I was obsessed with dinosaurs. There's a whole lot of dinosaurs in that movie, but they walk around and they have skin on them instead of the skeletons I had seen in the Trenton Museum. A lot of people don't know the first dinosaur bones were discovered in New Jersey.
That's right. Yeah, they were.
It is actually the and then sometime in the 19th century, first time someone unearthed the dinosaur bone and kind of knew what it was. But all that to say, the other thing about that movie that's a big thing in my life that I think often goes unremarked on is that it is a movie about making movies. The main character, Carl Denham, is a filmmaker. And not only is he a filmmaker, he is a personal inspiration to me as to not the whole going on reckless cruises that get your crew massacred part. That's not great. But his enthusiasm for the gig is so great. And, in the scene where he's recruiting Fay Wray in Times Square after she was about to get caught stealing an apple, and he's asking her all these questions about, like, have you ever done any acting? Wonder if the dresses on the ship will fit you and all that. And she's like, but I don't understand. What's this all about? And he's so excited he can't remain seated. And he stands up and he says, it's about adventure and excitement and a long sea voyage that starts tomorrow morning at dawn. And who doesn't want to feel that way about what they do for a living? That it's adventure and excitement and a long sea voyage that starts tomorrow at dawn. And that is what making movies will always be to me, is that Carl Denham, I'm going to take everybody to the circus, and we're to see the monsters, and we're to see the pretty girl, and we're to hear the screams, and, we're going to have the laughs. And, that's the gig, that he's an entertainer first and foremost. And he just loves making pictures. And I think that got under my skin. And by the time, sometime in junior high, a kid from a richer family than mine had a Super 8 camera and could afford to buy Super 8 film and could afford to pay to get Super 8 film processed. And he, for whatever reason, identified me as someone who loved movies and knew something about movies and maybe had an idea how movies were made. So he asked me to make short films with him. And like everyone who starts out making art, everything we did was initially derivative. We made a Star Wars movie called Return of the Empire that took place between Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back.
Nice.
I played Han Solo.
Oh, man, look at that. Look at
that. The shortest Han Solo in history. Alden Ehrenreich close, but I'm shorter than Alden Ehrenreich even. I loved Alden Ehrenreich in that movie. I will stand up for all the short Han Solos everywhere. But
I will stand up for him and that movie. I actually like that movie, dude.
I really love that movie. I think it's a great, fun Star Wars movie, and Ironically, it's exactly what the incels were asking for out of Star Wars, but it was too late. They already had decided. Kathleen Kennedy said, "You want a boy movie that's about a boy who drives fast and has a big friend and blah blah. Fine, we'll give you a boy movie." And they were, "Nope, fuck you, too late. You scared us off with those. You scared us off with those two movies starring
Solo
Pretty Little English
hurt.
ladies."
Yeah, Solo definitely got hurt by the reaction from Last Jedi, right?
Yeah.
Because Solo, dude, I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is like the great train robbery in Star Wars. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Woody Harrelson was great. Like, I loved it. Maybe they shouldn't have explained every single reference that Han Solo ever made. But
the fan service thing could have waited 2 movies to cram all that stuff in. No, and I'm very sorry they didn't make the second movie because when Star Wars came out, when all we knew about Han Solo was what we see about him in Star Wars, it was very easy to connect him thematically to Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. Because he literally, Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, I stick my neck out for nobody. I'm not in this for your rebellion, princess, and I'm not in it for you. It's a Humphrey Bogart part. It's the soldier of fortune who's cynical. And the setup
because he lost his heart, right?
Exactly. And the setup for this, and I never thought about that. And watching that movie with Emilia Clarke playing his Ilsa Lund, from Casablanca, I went, oh, we're going to get the Casablanca story of who broke Han Solo's heart and made him the cynical mercenary who gets turned around when he meets our beloved Princess General. So like that, I was ready to see the Han Solo Casablanca movie that was going to follow Solo that they set up. I mean, there's a lot of it in Solo, but you can see they were definitely aiming towards another movie where we were going to really get into Han, solidifying into the guy he becomes later. And
hey, Chewie, out of all the cantinas she had to walk into, why did she walk into mine?
Exactly. Like there was going to be a final heartbreak that was going to really push him over the edge into being the dude that we know and love. And I was ready to see that. I love Alden Ehrenreich. One of my favorite movies in the last 20 years is Hail Caesar. And
I love that movie, the Coen Brothers film, dude. That movie is so good.
That is one of my comfort films. Like anytime that's on, I stop dead and watch it, and it makes me laugh so hard. And to see Ehrenreich go up against Ralph Fiennes for comedy timing in the Lawrence, Would That It Were So Simple. They're both geniuses in that. And the way he holds his own with one of the greatest actors in the English language, and he's brand new. Now, if you want a mirthless chuckle, Mr. Lorenz, I want to give it to you. It's Lorenz. But I said, okay. He's so goddamn funny in it. And an old dear friend of mine who passed away recently had a very small part in that movie, and I also love seeing him. He played the director of the film, and he has my favorite line in the film, which is "Squint against the grandeur."
Yes.
To Clooney when he's looking at Jesus. Squint against the grandeur. What does that mean? That's fantastic. And also, the thing that will always make my wife laugh is the impression of Tilda Swinton, "Sodomy, Eddie." When she's talking about George Clooney having some dirty past, it's sodomy, Eddie. She's so funny in that, playing Hedda Harper.
Nobody ever mentions Hail Caesar, dude. So dude, that's awesome. I love that.
It's such a great man, and it's also, the funny thing about them and what I love about the Coen brothers is that is actually a movie about religion. The whole movie is about religion, and it ports the discussion about religion into Hollywood. But you hear the religious figures say in the funniest scene in the movie when Brolin is talking to the priest and the Russian Orthodox guy and the rabbi and the Protestant minister. The Godhead cannot be photographed. We never see the studio head, Mr. Skank.
That's right.
Because the Godhead cannot be photographed. Like it's subtle, but it is a movie about religion and God. And and Clooney going up on his line on the word faith. If only I had but the line, like it's so faith. God damn it.
I'm very curious now. What do you think about A Serious Man? I'm very curious because I think that's another undersung. I think that's one of their better films. It's one of their most.
I also love that movie.
I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Word.
No, I love that. And again, I had an Italian Catholic dad, but my mother was Jewish, and I'm a Jewish kid from the suburbs. So and from the grew up in the suburbs in the 70s. So that's very.
There's a lot in that movie. Then that must be very
a lot
familiar
in that movie for me. Yeah.
Were you stoned during your bar mitzvah? Because that sounds like very intimidating.
I will say I was an atheist by the time I turned 13, like my mother, who was Jewish but an atheist. And I think one of the proudest moments of her life is when she asked me if I wanted her bar mitzvah, and I told her, I'm not going to pretend I believe in God to get grandpa to give me a pile of money. Like, I'd like the pile of money, but I'm not going to go study with a rabbi and read the Torah that I don't believe a word of. Like, I can't fake my way through this. And I think she was so proud of me for not succumbing to the social pressure of it. And look, I have no disrespect for people who do it. That is your culture. That is your religion. Do it. But I am not Jewish in that way. I am not a follower of the Torah in that way. So it's not, but the movie's great. And the other line from Hail Caesar about religion, which we always quote one another, is Robert Picardo's beautiful button on that scene, which is, I have no opinion. Yes. after he's just been incredibly opinionated. So you're saying that God is three people? I don't, I'm confused. You're not confused. These men are screwballs.
Yes.
He's so funny. That's one of his great performances. And like I said, everyone is great in that movie.
I really worry that Hail Caesar is going to be one of those forgotten movies come down the road, man. But like so many of the Coen brothers, everybody talks about Fargo and Big Lebowski and Oh Brother, and rightly so. But like movies like Serious Man and what are we just talking about? Oh my goodness, Hail Caesar. And Miller's Crossing. I think those are some of their best films. Man.
In
Miller's Crossing, when that dude comes and hits that guy and then walks in, he hits me like it's just like so funny, dude. Like I don't know. It's
not to keep name dropping, but one of the great things about living in Hollywood for 40 years is you meet people and you become friends with people you never thought you'd have in your life. And one of my dearest friends, who also passed away about 5-6 years ago, was John Polito, who's Johnny Gaspari, and just like it blew my mind when we started to be friends. Just hearing from him, showing my wife the caller ID, going, "It's Johnny Casper on the phone, honey. It's probably inviting us to a dinner party." Hey, Dave, well, we're grilling some steaks on Labor Day. If you want to come over with a wife, it'd be fucking great. He was, and he was a Philly guy. My wife is a Philly girl, so they got along very, very well. But he was just a wonderful, wonderful cat. He lit up a room, and he's such a tremendous actor. I really think he should have gotten an Academy Award nomination for Miller's Crossing, because it's a very rich. He's a thug, but he's. The scene where he slaps the kid and goes, who hit you? Like he didn't just do it himself. Are you okay? Who hit you? Why are you crying? Like literally just smacked him in the face, dude. But it's a tremendous performance.
The Coen brothers, through their directing of performances and the writing of the script and the characters, they have so many like intentionally and unintentionally funny moments in their movies, right? Like you can watch a Coen brothers movie and be like, I don't feel like I should have laughed at all during that movie, but that was one of the most funny movies I've ever seen.
I think they have a pretty dark sense of humor, and I think the jokes are pretty much always intentional. I think the thing I think that happens though sometimes is that A friend of mine said once that the first time they watched Raising Arizona, it was the funniest movie they had ever seen, and by the fourth time, it was one of the saddest movies they'd ever seen. And they said, multiple viewings. Now I see it as a very sad movie about a childless couple, though they're also a little childish, whose childlessness has made them do this desperate, stupid thing, and it's sad. And it's sad that they don't have that they don't have a kid, and that they reach this absurd conclusion. Now y'all without sin can throw the first stone. That's a perfect movie. Raising Arizona is an absolutely perfect movie.
The Coen brothers.
It also made me buy my first Hawaiian shirt.
Oh, nice.
I had never bought a Hawaiian shirt before I saw Raising Arizona, and then I saw Raising Arizona. I was like, that's a good summer. That movie came out right before I moved to California, and I was like, I wear suits and jackets a lot. And I was like, I need a summer look that I enjoy as much as wearing a suit jacket. And the Hawaiian shirt with the white T-shirt on underneath, that's not a bad look.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
old beat up khakis or jeans, that's a pretty solid desert community look that I can wear when I go grocery shopping.
I don't want to date either of us, but I get the sense that you're like maybe like 10-ish years older than me, right? I was born in 1981, right?
I am far more than 10-ish years older than
15-ish years older than me. And for me, it was like when I watched Big Lebowski for the first time, I'm like, bowling shirts. I'm going to try bowling shirts. Sure.
Yeah. Look, I mean, and this is that age gap. It's like, I realized one Sunday afternoon, I was watching an episode of The Twilight Zone or something, and Rod comes out in the black suit with the white shirt and the white tie, and submitted for your approval. And I'm watching that, and I realized, even in my generation, young men didn't particularly wear suits to go out of the house every day. That's an older school thing. But I realized watching Twilight Zone that the reason I dress the way I do is that when I was a kid, my role models for what an adult man looked like were all from early 60s movies. So it makes sense to me that I am forever trying to look like Marcello Mastroianni or Sean Connery, or I'm looking at Rod Serling on this episode going, I have a suit exactly like that. That is the suit that I wear. That is my black suit that he has on. And it's because I watched Rod Serling. I said, it's a good look for a man. Black suit, white shirt, black tie. That's a friend of mine once said David got his fashion sense from a 1955 FBI training film. And I don't necessarily I was like, well, if you call Goldfinger a training film, sure.
Meanwhile, for me, it was Don Johnson. It was Miami Vice. And every time I show up in pink and white suit, I wonder why people look at me funny.
I remember when that show came out, I was mad because everyone told me that I had gotten the idea to not shave from Don Johnson. I said, no, I'm lazy is what that is. I have 5 o'clock shadow because I am lazy and I don't like shaving. I am not imitating Don Johnson in any way, shape, or form.
Nice.
But
I like that.
The iconic stuff of your youth, makes you go a certain way. And that's the way I ended up going.
Yeah. I completely understand that, man. And I love the way you articulated King Kong being a film about filmmaking. I never heard anybody else really talk about it like that.
Thank you.
And here we are 30 minutes in after I told you, maybe we'll go 30 minutes. We haven't even gotten to comics. So, I mean, that's there you go.
That's all right.
I wanted to know your thoughts about the King Kong remakes and which one you like the best, because I love the 70s one, but we can get into that another time.
The 70s, what the 70s one has going for it is John Barry's score, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and Jeff Bridges, I would say. I like Jeff Bridges a lot.
Well, and at that period in his career, Jeff Bridges was to me a guy that I went to see terrible movies with, who made it bearable. Yes. Hey, Dave, I'm in Tron. Cool, we'll hang out for 2 hours and you'll tell me about computers, whatever. But the problem with every King Kong remake is that they know how it ends. The thing about 1933 King Kong is it does not even for a minute telegraph that you're going to feel bad about Kong when he dies. That's not telegraphed at all. Fay Wray has no sympathy for Kong. And it's literally 30 seconds before Kong dies. When you see him getting riddled by machine gun bullets on the top of the Empire State Building, you suddenly catch in your throat and go, oh, this isn't right. This isn't his fault. He's being carved up by the Army Air Corps, but he didn't want to be in New York. He didn't want to be a Broadway star. Like, he didn't ask for any of this. And this is not a fitting punishment for what, you know, he didn't have to crash through the wall on Skull Island. That's all because these idiots showed up and interfered in everything. And every other King Kong movie, the Fay Wray character immediately like, no, he's a sweet animal and I want to protect him. And that's not the original movie at all. And I think same thing with like Frankenstein remakes and whatever. Like, and in the Mary Shelley book, the monster is sympathetic all the way through. Like, that's not only in the movies. But in the first movie, the sympathy you get for him comes long after him being terrifying. You know, and then at the end of the second movie, when you get to him saying to the bride, "We belong dead," that is beautiful and heartbreaking, but only because he's scary for a movie and a half. You know what I mean? He's not a.
Dude,
he's not
the
a
ending of Bride is, to me, like one of the most tragically poetic and beautiful moments in cinema, man. Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
It's great. We belong dead, like all that. Oh my god, so good,
heartbreaking. And I referenced it in Elvira in Monsterland #2 has a prolonged sequence at the end of that. And there's something I did in that comic for my wife specifically. She has kind of lousy parents, and they lied to her about her childhood. And only much later did she start unraveling all the lies she had been told about her early childhood. Because how do you know? You're not forming memories at that age. So my wife is kind of obsessed with robot girls who have like implanted memories, who their creators are evil and all that. Okay. And I did this poetic thing in partially because I find the bride such an incredible character, and she's on screen for like 90 seconds. Like, you barely meet her and then the movie's over. I did the thing in that issue where when other people are around, the bride is literally just screaming her head off. And when it's just Elvira and the bride, she starts speaking in a normal tone of voice. And she says, "Oh, you talk." And she says, "Oh, I talk. I'm very aware of who I am and where I am." And she says, "I know that I am sister to Maria and grandmother to Rachel."
Yeah.
Maria from Metropolis and Rachel from Blade Runner. And it's that whole thing, you know, women created by men to be servants, to be helpmates, with implanted memories, with, you know, our entire existence is a lie, and blah, 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 blah. And it ends with her saying, "But I am aware and I will make them pay." And Elvira says, "You're pretty intense, sister, but I dig you and I wish you all the best of luck with your revolution."
Dude, you've added another layer to that, dude. That's awesome. I love that bit.
Thank you.
I love that moment, man. I always thought it was because you chose an Italian name and a Jewish name, Maria and Rachel. But like, I didn't make that connection. It's awesome. Maria,
the robot girl from Metropolis, and Rachel from the Tyrell Corporation. And then in the final issue of the series, when there's a big, crazy Avengers Endgame battle scene, she gets joined by, Elvira gets protected by a commando squad made up of the bride, Maria, Rachel, and also Dolores from Westworld is there with her Winchester. Is there with her Winchester rifle, because she's another one of those girls. You know, she's one in the long line of women created to be male fantasies with fake or distorted memories, or with their memory taken away from them, as, you know, Dolores Abernathy has her memory taken away from her all the time. So, you know, I do, even though it's a comedy book, I do stuff the occasional feminist message in there.
Well, I'm curious if
I did that for my wife.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Are you? This is so perfectly timed for today. The Bride by Maggie Gyllenhaal just released. I'm very excited to see it. I'm going to go see it Sunday. Are you watching it?
I'm going to see it on Sunday. I'm going taking my wife to see it in North Hollywood on 1:00 on Sunday, and I'm looking forward to it. You know, it's a there are these characters that we keep coming back to for a reason. And like I said, I can't think of another character in pop culture that makes that much impact in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Like it's not shocking that, it's not shocking that we have 29, 30 James Bond movies, whatever. But there are hundreds of movies with the Bride of Frankenstein, and she's 90 seconds. Like she's barely in that movie.
Action figures and statues, toys and backpacks,
and people forget all those. I remember the Jennifer Beals Sting movie from the 80s, where Clancy Brown.
I remember watching that as a kid and being like, I don't see where Frankenstein is. I don't understand this movie. When I was a kid, like we're talking like 8 years old, being like, I don't understand this movie.
Yeah.
But I like it now. So
it's an interesting movie, directed by the director of Quadrophenia, which was one of the reasons I was excited to see it, because I was obsessed with Quadrophenia when I was a teenage mod. But
All right, we got to start talking about comic books now. I could keep going. I could keep going about movies. This is what I'm saying, David. Me and you, like, we cool. Giant Size Savage Tales is coming out. You're doing a series of short stories. You got a Vampirella story. You got a Red Sonja story. Other stories. Tell us what to expect and what's going on.
The Vampirella story is about a female police officer in the Major Crimes Unit who discovers that a guy working for the Russian mafia is a vampire. And I wrote this Vampirella story for a Valentine's Day issue a year or two ago, which I was very happy with the story. And it was about a young beat cop who meets Vampirella in the 70s and has a one-night stand with her and then just never forgets her. And the end of the story is she comes to see him on the day that he retires, and she has not aged a day, and he's not surprised by that because he knows she's a vampire. So in this, that Major Crimes cop talks to her old friend, the private detective, who's the guy from the short story that I did a couple of years ago. And he says, I actually know who can solve this problem for you. I actually know a vampire. So that's the story about, and partially it's about a thing that's my favorite thing about Vampirella. My favorite thing about Vampirella is that she's not from the tradition of Dracula. She's from a planet called Draculon. She's an alien being from a planet where they drink water out of drink blood out of streams that, naturally occur and all that. And that's what I love about her. So I always lean into she's an alien thing. And I also lean into well, then what are vampires on Earth? And she basically tells the cop, there's basically two kinds of vampires. There's vampires like me who are from the old country. She doesn't specify that it's a planet in outer space, she says. And then there's the sort of diluted vampires, vampire hybrids with humans. And those are the ones that the sun makes them burn, and you can get them with a cross, and you can get them with vampires from Draculon are not, particularly vulnerable to any of that shit. You have to kill them a lot harder. So that's what that story is about. The Red Sonja story is a very short story. That one's either 8 or 10 pages. And it's about the fall of a monarchy, and Red Sonja is hired. Think about the Russian Revolution, basically. Think about someone who worked for the Romanovs hires Red Sonja to get them the hell out of Moscow. And he tells her, he doesn't tell her he's part of the monarchy. He tells her, I'm just a wealthy merchant, and the peasants are being very undiscriminating with who they're beheading right now. So when she finds out who he really is, it changes the story, let's just say. And that one's called The Code. And then there's a Gulliver of Mars story. Not a lot of people are familiar with Gulliver of Mars. He's a predecessor of John Carter. I will say honestly that the book is not good. The Gulliver of Mars book, which is called Lieutenant, they change it to that title because of John Carter. The real title of the book is Lieutenant Gulliver Jones, his vacation. And the book tries to be both a picaresque adventure story and a satire, which he kind of telegraphs by calling the guy Gulliver. And he's bad at both things, the writer. It's a bad satire. It borrows a lot from H.G. Wells' Time Machine, actually, because he's kind of got the alloy and he's kind of got the Morlocks as the two races on Mars. And at the end, the hero kind of, rather than rescue the princess and save the day, he just fucks off back to Earth. So when they asked me to do a Gulliver story, I went, can I do anything I want with him? And they said, sure. And I said, I'm not going to violate I'm not going to change anything that happened in that book. But my story picks up 3 issues ago. I started writing this, and it picks up, and Gulliver is fighting in 1918 on the front lines of World War I. And after a particularly vicious battle, his sergeant says, you're a 40-year-old man. You were a naval officer. Why did you volunteer to be frontline infantry in the Ardennes? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? And he says, 20 years ago, I was a coward, and I behaved in a cowardly manner. And I was looking for redemption. And President Wilson has provided me with a crusade in which to maybe make up for what I did in the past. But then he gets an opportunity to return to Mars and make everything right that went wrong 20 years ago. So that's what that story's about.
So is the Gulliver? I'm not familiar with Gulliver of Mars. Is that connected to the Burroughs stuff?
No, not at all. It was written.
Okay.
Written a few years earlier, written about a decade earlier. There's a lot of scholarly back and forth about was Burroughs influenced by him, because there are commonalities. He travels to Mars by a very unconventional means. His means is a magic carpet as opposed to astral projection. There are multiple races. There's a beautiful princess that falls in love with him. There's a barbarian tribe that kidnaps her.
Oh,
but
wow.
the thing is, those tropes are in every adventure novel in the
every fantasy adventure, right? Yeah.
they're just not on Mars. That's the thing that makes it similar to John Carter.
Yeah.
But it's really,
you reverse that, you get Martian Manhunter, right? If you just he goes to Earth from Mars instead, right?
All that to say, I think it's easy to read them both and conclude that Burroughs never saw it, like that it never crossed his desk, that he never. There's not anything in there that goes, oh, he definitely lifted this. It's not like George Lucas referring to Spice Mines. It's like, no, I think he's read Dune, kids. Like, I don't think that. I think that's when he calls the Bantha, like, which is from John Carter of Mars. Like, I don't think it's ambiguous that he is what his influences are. He's pretty on his sleeve with them. But yeah, it's like I said, there's a little bit of argument over who inspired, whether or not Burroughs read the Gulliver book, but I don't think it's a very interesting topic. I think it ultimately the two things stand on their own, and one is great and inspired him. Like, George Lucas was not imitating Gulliver of Mars. It was 90 years out of print, when Star Wars was made.
Yeah, when you're doing fantasy adventure films, it's not hard to project something into another planet. At that time, Mars, bright in the sky, we're learning about planets. It makes a lot of sense, right?
Exactly. It was a topic it's the same reason H.G. Wells wrote War of the Worlds. Like, Mars was a late 19th century topic that people were interested in. And then the last story in the book is an Alan Quatermain story set in 1914. I was looking for something to write about that part of the world, and in 1914, the Germans in West South Africa, a very different country from British South Africa, decided that it would be fun to participate in what was going on in Europe, and they made a cross-border invasion into South Africa, and it didn't go great for them, and they went home, and then they decided that part of Africa stayed out of World War I for the next 4 years. And my story is about a platoon of German colonial troops that stumble upon Alan Quatermain's ranch house and decide to use it as a headquarters, not realizing whose ranch house they have commandeered. And the framing story is 2 British sailors, because I have to complicate everything. 2 British sailors on a merchant marine ship in the 1920s, and the commanding officer asks his first mate, Commander Marlowe, you see any action in the Great War? And he says, yeah, I was in South Africa. We didn't see any action down there. But I met a guy that had seen some action. We fished this German soldier out of the Orange River, and he told this incredible story. You want to hear it? And he tells the story. And for the fans watching at home, because I have to overcomplicate everything and make it pretentious, Marlowe is, of course, the narrator of Conrad's Heart of Darkness. It's that guy. It's that, because after Heart of Darkness, according to other Conrad, like Lord Jim, Marlowe continued to stay in after he left Kurtz's compound and let the jungle take it back over. He went on to have a career as a riverboat captain in South Africa for much of his life. So I wanted an old British sailor to tell this story to another British sailor. And I went, let's use the classic dude, you know. And there's the slightest hat tip to Heart of Darkness when the commanding officer says to him, "You know, I love your stories, Marlowe." You know, like you're a guy that tells a pretty great story about Africa, Marlowe. Let's hear this story. I thought it'd be fun to have one iconic white man in Africa telling the story of the other iconic white man in Africa. I thought it'd be fun to have Conrad's Marlowe talk about H. Rider Haggard's Quatermain in their limited overlap as white adventure heroes or literary heroes in South Africa at the turn of the century. So
I'm a big fan of classic literature and in particular Victorian era genre literature. It seems like you are too. Like I love the H.G. Wells, the Bram Stoker, all that kind of stuff.
There's a thing about, I did an episode about this of my podcast called Pulp Today, and I'm trying to remember what I used as an example. I might have used Tarzan as an example. Fantasy, sci-fi, adventure before the 1920s or 30s is always presented as a true crazy story that someone told me once, and you don't have to believe it.
Bro, I literally just started reading today The Island of Dr. Moreau, and it starts the same way. Like, we found this diary. Like,
they all start that way. Frankenstein is, my brother went on this Arctic adventure, and when he came back, he told me the craziest fucking story about these two things he met in the Arctic that were chasing each other. Dracula is, we have compiled all these letters these people wrote each other about this, you know, count from Romania. Tarzan begins, I had this story from someone who had no right to tell it to me. Princess of Mars begins, I had this crazy uncle from Virginia named John Carter. I'd seen at family events, never seemed to age, vanished for decades at a time. When he came back, he always looked about the same. You know, like, it's always the idea that maybe people couldn't accept a science fiction premise without it being wrapped in, this is a crazy true story someone told me.
It's like the start of the National Enquirer or Weekly World News or something, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, Poe, I think that's also another found document.
This is the OG found footage. Right?
Yeah. But it gives, you know, it gives some weight and truth into it instead of just here is a science fiction story that I am telling you that you will know from the beginning is fanciful.
Yeah, if somebody's fictional. Reading like Hail Mary today and it starts off with like, here's a story I got from my crazy ass cousin, they're going to be like, this is so stupid.
Yeah, that's not,
because now we're attuned to being like, I want genre fiction. Let me crack into this paperback, right? Yeah.
So I love that tradition. So I wanted to repeat it in the Quatermain story. You know who? There's something about the Mad Max movies that I think people do not notice, and it's a brilliant way of dealing with canon. 3 out of 5 of them, and I'm only saying this because I haven't seen Fury Road in a while, are narrated by people who do not actually witness the story that happened.
Oh, that's right.
The feral kid is telling you Road Warrior. He's not in 3/4 of the scenes in the movie. And he was pre-verbal when it happened. Did he know what people were saying to each other, even if he was there? This is we're hearing the non-verbal, uneducated feral kid telling the story as a 60-year-old man of the time he met the legendary Mad Max. You find out at the end of Thunderdome, it's Savannah Nix from the Children in the is telling the story to kids in the ruins of Sydney. Mad Max doesn't meet her until an hour into the movie.
Yeah.
Did he tell her all that stuff that happened? I mean, I love the fact that, like, I love to say that, like, the reason the Gyro Captain shows up in 2 of the movies and he's a different character, but he's the same character. In the 20 years since the events of Thunderdome happened, Savannah Nix heard someone tell the story of Road Warrior and has added the Gyro Captain from Road Warrior into her Mad Max story, because a good Mad Max story has a crazy skinny aviator in it. So let's just use. But I loved, and then the Furiosa movie.
That's a great movie too,
and it's told by the Holy Man.
Yep,
who is also not. He's in like 5 scenes. How does he know any of that? He doesn't.
Yeah,
the entire
Mad
Max.
Are we getting a It's like, are we getting a story told about a legendary heroic character?
Exactly.
Are we getting the mythological legend of a heroic figure?
That's right? It's King Arthur stories being told by people who were like 5 and they met King Arthur once, and they have constructed a story in their mind from what other people told them.
Did he just say, "Blessed are the cheese makers"? It's like
exactly, but that's exactly it. I love the idea that he throws canon out the window and goes, "These are all folk tales. These are folk tales of the apocalypse, and sometimes they involve this guy named Mad Max in one way or the other. And sometimes he's a very different guy, and that's okay. I always, when I saw Fury Road, I was like, no, that's not Max. That's the feral kid cosplaying as his hero from his childhood.
Yeah.
And the giveaway to that is that when we see his flashbacks of the trauma that made him Mad Max, it's not Max's wife and kid getting killed by the motorcycle gang in Mad Max. It's some post-apocalyptic settlement being raided. And it's like, that's not Max's traumatic memories. What's this guy remembering?
Right. I actually was having this conversation the other day on Saturday. And somebody was like, yeah, I don't know about the Mad Max movies because they're very inconsistent and this and that. And like, I was like, did you like Furiosa? And he's like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, well, is it? But like, dude, like the way you're talking about it, like these are stories about a hero told from somebody within that cult. Yeah.
The only one that's conceivably being told to you by Mad Max is the first one. That's the only one with like no trace of a narrator who's the one telling you this story anywhere. But 3 out of 5 have a narrator. And I thought about it when I watched Furiosa, and I went, this guy's narrating the story. He didn't see any of it. Like, he literally met Furiosa 2 or 3 times, and he's the one telling her whole story. And there's no scene where she sits down with him and say, I was born in this utopian settlement. I got caught by like, she doesn't tell him the story. So how the hell does he know any of it? He doesn't. He's just, it's campfire tales. And I think that's such a great way to get around canon. And I like applying it to everything. You know what I mean? There's a thing I think it's in one of Mike W. Barr. No, it's in one of Peter David's Star Trek novels that is fucking hilarious, that a lot of guys in Starfleet Command do not believe Captain Kirk's logs.
Yes.
They just don't. Admiral Jellicoe from Next Generation, it comes up in one of the Next Generation novels where Kirk comes up in conversation, and Admiral Jellicoe is like, that fucking guy, Nazi planet, gangster planet, come on, none of that happened. And the person he's talking to says he was backed up by his whole crew, Mr. Spock, Engineer Scott. They all said all those things happened. They all backed him up at the debrief, and he's like, they were being loyal to their narcissistic weirdo psychotic captain. They didn't want to ruin his career by saying none of this shit happened. And I love the idea that Kirk's reports are just too unbelievable. This guy didn't save the universe.
I love that you mentioned that, dude, because I've read so many Star Trek novels. Like that whole bookshelf back there is all Star Trek novels. There's another one there. Peter David is one of my favorite writers.
Yeah, I can't remember which book it's in. I haven't read all of them, but it's
he's done so many, right? But like when I first met him, I'm a big Aquaman guy, and I just wanted to be like, man, this is my chance to talk to Peter David about Aquaman. I wanted to talk about Aquaman. He felt like he could care less. I felt like he could care less, dude. So I went back out to the car, dropped off my Aquaman books I got signed, brought my Star Trek books in. This dude talked to me for like 45 minutes about Star Trek novels.
Sure. No, look,
it was awesome.
Look, I've worked on a lot of IP. I like some of it is stuff that I love and couldn't wait to write and could talk about it excitedly forever. Some of it's a gig, and you go, I don't have a lot of enthusiasm for this. But the thing I will say though, and I'm sure this is true of Peter David. If you had asked him while he was writing the Aquaman stories, he probably would have been pretty excited to tell you about them. But in the fullness of his career, it's not the thing that he remembered loving or cared about that much.
Yeah.
Look, I love working with IP. I love the problem solving aspect of it. And the thing I told you about Gulliver is a perfect example of that. It's a dumb character. He's not heroic. He's a coward. I had to find a way to make him someone I could admire. And the only way I can admire Gulliver of Mars is if 20 years later, he's like, I behaved terribly. I behaved terribly in the adventure novel with my name on it. How can I make it right? How can I be a better man than that? I wrote a John Carter thing, the first John Carter thing I ever wrote. Love the character, love Edgar Rice Burroughs, love the books. There's something in there about him I absolutely fucking can't stand. And it's a pop culture trope going back 150, 175 years now that sucks ass. And that is the noble ex-Confederate. I do not believe in the noble ex-Confederate. I do not believe such a person exists as the noble guy who fought to defend slavery. So I wrote a short story called Honeymoon on Mars, where John and Deja are on their honeymoon, and they encounter guys who have kidnapped the greatest telepath on Mars, and they rescue him. And Deja says, if you know your John Carter background, like, you don't know your origin, you don't know where you come from, your past is a mystery to you. Maybe the great telepath of Mars can read your mind and find out who you really are. And the guy, he agrees to it, and the guy starts the mind meld, and then there's this page, just an explosion of violent imagery from the life of John Carter. Scenes of him in every war leading up to the American Civil War. I put a red coat on him in the American Civil War, just in case, or in the American Revolution, just to make it clear who he is. And the telepath breaks contact and says, look, I couldn't go all the way back to the origin. The violence was too much for me. And he says, look, you are a killer. It's the thing you're good at, and you enjoy it, and you're a warrior first and foremost, or you were, until you met Deja Thoris. You had not one thought in your head about mercy, about justice, about doing the right thing. But in your love for Deja Thoris, the love of Deja Thoris has transformed you. You have been made good by her. You're a good man now. You're a hero because of the love of Deja Thoris. And that's the end of the story. And I needed that to be able to write John Carter going forward.
Yeah.
I needed to conceptualize John Carter as a lifelong mercenary, a 1,000-year-old eternal mercenary, because he had seen violence. Like, when he begins fighting in wars, there's no good side of Oog and Og hitting each other with sticks. It's just two cavemen hitting each other with sticks. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of moral, or plenty of wars without good guys and bad guys, and that's what he's used to. And I always say about John Carter, he was a Confederate because he was living in Richmond, Virginia when the war started. That's the only reason.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because I'm in Alabama, and I went to a high school named Lee High School.
Sure.
Named after Robert E. Lee. We were the generals. That was a whole thing back in the 90s. I remember having those conversations with the student body and all that shit. When I look at like Edgar Rice Burroughs, I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong, this dude's from like Chicago.
Oh yeah.
So why is that? Was it just because this was a trope to connect it to a recent war or something?
It's the thing where And look, Joss Whedon does it in Firefly, which kind of nauseates me a little bit too. It's the idea that it's more tragic to have lost a war.
Oh, to be the losing
You,
general
you
in the
had
war.
a, like you fought the good fight and you lost. It's like, yeah, it wasn't, to quote General Grant. General Grant has a great quote in his memoir, and I'm going to mangle it, but he says something like, they were gallant and they were brave and they were fighting for the worst cause anyone has ever fought for in the history of mankind. He's like, I'm not saying they're bad guys. They didn't know what they were doing, but like the cause they chose to live and die for was a monstrous one, and there's no getting around that. It doesn't mean they weren't brave. Doesn't mean they weren't great soldiers. It just means they made a terrible choice of which side to be on. And so that's and I think if you go all the way back, there's even in Shakespearean times, in Elizabethan England, there's an attraction to Troy over Athens in the Trojan War.
Okay, yeah.
Because they lose, because they're the beautiful. They all died for the love of their prince, for their princess. You know,
there's something romantic. It's like Gone with the Wind. There's like a romanticized version of it, right? Of the fall.
And I would say that that romanticized version of the South before 1865 is fucking poison in our culture, and I would love to get rid of it. You know, I do not have the Northern president.
Oh, there were some people that were kind to their slaves. Like we get that shit all the time, man. Like, and come on, get out of here.
Yeah, the Irish were slaves too. Yeah, they could be indentured servants for 7 years. Their children weren't immediately born into slavery. Like, it's not the same damn thing, man. It's a very, very, very different thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I sort of couldn't live with the idea of not making it super clear that John Carter had not learned from the experience of being on Mars and seeing races oppressed for the color of their skin, like, because the thing that's funny about John Carter is, what does John Carter do? He's the inspiration for Flash Gordon a decade later, of like, all of you people of different races should come together and not make war on one another. Like, that's what John Carter does on Mars.
Yep.
Is he tries to make peace between the green Martians and the red Martians. That does not seem very former Confederate cavalry officer to me.
Well, it actually would make it more profound if it's because of his involvement in that war and what he learned, right? It would be, but that's not what's in the original material.
Yeah, but I just made it and the thing is, I also am going off the fact that if you take Burroughs at his word, it's John Carter telling us about his adventure in John Carter of Mars. Also, it's a first-person singular narrative. So I'm saying this is the part John Carter didn't want to tell you about himself, is that he was kind of a maniac when he was living on Earth and just killing people for no good goddamn reason whenever he had an opportunity to. And falling in love with Deja Thoris made him model her behavior. And she is noble and kind and good and empathic and all that. And he saw the value in those things once he saw them in the woman that he loved. And it
David, we always have great and deep conversations when we're here about story, film, comic books, wherever story lies. I got so many things I want to ask you about. We'll save them for next time.
Sure.
I know you're a busy dude. This book
I got
comes
stuff
out
coming up. So
this one comes out in what, April?
Yeah, the final order cutoff is like March 30th, I want to say, and then the book is a month later, like April 25th or something like that. And yeah, cool. It's you know, it's 54 pages of action and adventure. They're all, I'm proud of all the stories, but I really love the Alan Quatermain story. I got to say, there's a twist to it that I will not blow for you that I'm very happy with. And the other artists, Mariano and Pasquale, I've worked with before, and they're great, and I love working with them. But the Quatermain one is an artist I'd never worked with before, named Sebastian Perez, who I'd seen seen him on social media. Like, this is, you know, kids, if you're an artist, put your shit on social media, because some writer might see your Spider-Man portrait and go, God, that guy is really fucking good. He's got
he just did some of the Johnny Quest books with Joe Casey.
Yeah, he did.
They're so
and
good.
He has an Alex Toth-like facility with deep blacks and negative space and page design just fabulous fucking stuff. And so that was a real I hope I get to work with him again on something, because it's I really am happy with how that first time we're working together. Because also that book, I was very afraid of who was going to draw it, because there was a lot, it's a ranch house in 1914 Africa. It's uniforms for the Schutztruppe, German colonial troops. It's like there's a lot of, it's two different early 20th century warships, a German torpedo boat and a British merchant marine from the 20s. Like, it's a lot of really specific research materials that I had to give him. And he, flying colors, he got it all right. Everything looks great in it. And, it was actually kind of surprising how well he handled all the complicated period stuff and all that. And again, it takes place at night, and it's kind of a spooky story. So like his particular art style was just chef's kiss for it.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome, man. All right, everybody, pre-orders coming up at the end of the month, your FOC. So go ahead and get in your orders. Let your shop know that you want to check it out. I'm very excited to check this one out. Before we wrap up and get to what else you got coming up, very curious. Last time you were here, you mentioned a little bit of a love of the filmmaker David Cronenberg. Sure. You said you didn't like all of his films, but there are some of his that you think are absolutely the best. What would you say are the Mount Rushmore of Cronenberg films? I
like all of them, even the ones that don't work, because they are big swings. David Cronenberg never doesn't take a big swing. He's always trying something no one else has tried.
It's almost like the easiest movie he ever did was The Dead Zone.
Yeah.
Like
and that's a gorgeously directed movie. Like that is another pretty much perfect movie. My favorite movie of his, I have to say, is actually Naked Lunch. In the same way that King Kong is about filmmaking, Naked Lunch is about writing. It's one of the best films ever made about writing and the challenges of writing. He takes the most unfilmable novel that anyone has ever written. I mean, it's even kind of crazy to call it a novel. It's a collection of incredibly vulgar, grotesque vaudeville sketches, basically. Some of them are hilarious. Some of them are shocking, but he manages to weave that into a story. I thought it was very funny that and Barton Fink came out the same year, and they're almost the same movie, and they both have Judy Davis kind of in the same role.
Yes.
But it's a great movie. And that character that Peter Weller plays, filtered through the lens of some other William Burroughs stuff, shows up in the last issue of Elvira in Horrorland, and he's all through Elvira in Monsterland. He represents, what did I call them? I think I called them the Nova Zone Express, which is kind of a police force that keeps reality from falling apart. And again, the Civil War joke, he's Agent Lee in the original. Of course, I made him Agent Grant in the parody version of that, because why not? And Kuber Ball did a great job drawing Peter Weller and putting him in my comic book. But yeah, Naked Lunch is probably top 5 for me. I also have a great affection for Scanners, which was the first movie of his I ever saw. The Fly is a perfect movie. I like A History of Violence, but it doesn't feel like one of his movies to me as much as some of the others. It's okay. Like, I don't know that I think Videodrome is a great movie, but it's fucking nuts. It's, and it's so extreme in what it is. I did read after Naked Lunch came out, and this is forgetting the second half of his filmography. Someone pointed out in an essay, and I think it's partly true, that kind of all of his movies up to that point are adaptations of Naked Lunch. For example, there is a chapter, and it's only one chapter, of Naked Lunch about a cult of telekinetic mind readers called the Senders.
Oh, wow. The Senders, huh?
Not the Scanners, the Senders. And it's not reflected that much in Scanners, but it's like, here's this chapter from Naked Lunch. And, the stuff growing on people's bodies in Rabid, and The Brood, that's all very much out of William Burroughs. William Burroughs could have written those stories. So, yeah, I mean, even, I don't think Cosmopolis works, and I think it's very slow, but it's an uncanny movie. You watch it, and it's not like anything else you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate. I noticed about Crash, and Ballard paid him the ultimate compliment. Someone in a press conference said, how do you feel about, that a film can't go as far as your novel went? And Ballard went, the movie goes much further than the novel does. Are you crazy? He's like, I shy away from the homosexual sex scene in the book. Cronenberg goes for it. Cronenberg just nope, I'm going to show you James Spader taking it up the ass from Elias Koteas, because that's where we are, man. I am not afraid I'm going to look at that with my unblinking David Cronenberg eye.
That's the reality of the story I'm telling you.
I am going to tell it. I am going to show you all of the things. And I think it's hard to think of another director. A lot of directors remake the same movie over and over again, even the great ones. Cronenberg really, if you look at his filmography, here's a movie about video games. Here's a movie about drugs. Here's a movie about television. Here's a movie about the mafia. Here's a movie about the Russian mafia. He made those at 2 years apart. Here's a movie about our obsession with automobiles and sex. The topic is always actually pretty different. Rabid is a movie about illness. It kind of prefigures the AIDS crisis, the sexually transmitted murderous disease.
And then you have Shivers, right?
And
which kind of
Shivers,
yeah.
So it's he's always, The Brood is about the body horror of giving birth.
Yeah.
Which is a very real thing. Any woman will be nauseated by The Brood and also kind of go, yeah, it's kind of like that. There's a little parasite and it's trying to kill you, and it's also your beloved child, and what the hell is that? So I appreciate that about him, that he wakes up one morning and says, I'm going to make a movie about psychotherapy. As opposed to, I'm going to make my 20th movie about the mafia. I'm going to make my 20th movie about monsters. I'm going to make my 20th movie. Spielberg jumps around a little bit too. But Spielberg's obsession with making everything about deadbeat dads, it particularly annoys me in War of the Worlds. Because War of the Worlds is about colonialism. And particularly in the aftermath of 9/11, the movie to make about War of the Worlds is the movie, H.G. Wells is making a movie that's what if we were Ethiopia? What if we were India? And someone shows up with machine guns and tanks and warships, and we can't do anything about it. 2001 was the time for Spielberg to make a movie that's what if we were Somalia?
Yeah.
And helicopter gunships that we can't destroy in any way, shape, or form are flying over and killing us. But he doesn't. He makes a movie about Tom Cruise doesn't know how to raise his kids.
Yeah, I think that's one. And I think you just hit the nail on the head as to why that's one of the weakest movies of his career, is because he wasn't of the time when he was making that movie.
And he just he goes.
He did it with Munich. Munich worked.
Yeah.
Right? But War of the Worlds.
Look, Munich is more valid today than it was at the time it was made.
It was. I think more people need to rewatch Munich because that's, I think, a forgotten Spielberg movie.
The whole point of, and I say this as a Jewish man, the point of Munich is maybe wiping out the people that are trying to kill us is not the best response to people trying to kill us. Maybe going after them hammer and tongs harder than they came at us and wiping them off the face of the earth is not the solution to this endless problem we've had. So that's a very mature movie, and War of the Worlds just done kind of. I will say though that I never realized how great any writer H.G. Wells was. I don't know why it never jumped out at me before until I heard Morgan Freeman's narration at the beginning of that movie. And I've heard 20 great actors do that narration, but I never noticed before, this is a great writer. The solution to that story is microbial bacteria kill the Martians. The opening narration is no one would have believed at the close of the 19th century that this Earth of ours was being watched by alien eyes from across the gulf of space. They examined us like the things that wriggle under a microscope. Like he literally tells you, this is a story about invisible things under a microscope that can kill you. And the Martians are looking at us the way we look at bacteria, and it's our bacteria that wipes out the Martians. Like I said, I've heard a million versions of that story. I never made until I heard Morgan Freeman said, like the things that squirm on the plate under a microscope or whatever line was. I went, oh, he totally sets it up. How great is that? That is like writing 101. I'm going to make sure the audience is thinking about microbes when we start this science fiction action horror story. And then at the end, they will totally have forgotten that I talked about that on page 1.
H.G. Wells is such an important figure when it comes to genre fiction and science fiction. Like I just started this thing this year where I was like, let me reread through H.G. Wells's work.
So
I reread Time Machine.
Yeah.
And I hadn't read Time Machine since I was like in middle school or something like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is about class structure.
Yep.
And the inequality that is persistent in humanity right now, extrapolated out thousands of years. Where do we go? Through evolution. And evolution, like the Darwin stuff, what had just happened recently. So that's cutting edge sci-fi.
Yeah. No,
I just started reading Island of Dr. Moreau again, and it's like, bruh, this is like so on the nose about stuff that is relevant today. And this stuff was written in the late 1800s. That's
and
ridiculous.
why Alan Moore is a genius is connecting Dr. Moreau making bioweapons to the virus that kills the Martians is fucking genius. Like that is I am not jealous of a lot of things that writers do, but that's one of those things where I went, that's really good. That is an incredible connection to make. One
of the things I regret about my YouTube career so far is that I said, I think Zack Snyder's ending of the Watchmen movie might be better. I don't think an audience would be able to understand the comic book ending. And then the Damon Lindelof HBO series happened. I was like, you know what? They made it work. They made it work. I'm wrong.
He proved you wrong. But that's actually, that Damon Lindelof series is a great example of what I was talking about working with IP. And particularly, that's the opposite of Gulliver on Mars. He's working with IP that's great. But you know what? It does have a flaw. And what's the flaw? The flaw is that Alan Moore, Englishman, does not understand the centrality of race in American history and politics. And David Lindelof went, we're going to make Watchmen, and it's going to be about the centrality of race in American politics and culture. Because that's the thing Alan Moore couldn't talk about because he doesn't have the background and he doesn't understand it because he's an Englishman. He does not understand American culture enough to grasp that. And that is the brilliant, like, what did Alan miss in all of the genius of that book? That's what he missed. Having significant Black characters, understanding race and culture and how it shapes history. We're going to do that part. And that's why that series was so fucking good. One thing about War of the Worlds, I just want to recommend. Are you familiar with the Jeff Wayne musical version? Because that is the best adaptation of it.
No, I have not. No.
There is in the late 70s, I think it was late 70s, this British music producer named Jeff Wayne did a musical. It's a 2-record set, 2 LPs. It is on iTunes and all that, called Jeff Wayne's production of the War of the Worlds. The narration is by Richard Burton. And it's no one would have believed at the end of the close of the 19th century that across the timeless gulf of space, like his voice is fantastic. There are songs, there are pop songs in it. It's a great musical score. It's got great sound effects. It's mesmerizing, and it sticks closer to H.G. Wells than any version of it you have ever encountered, except for the comic book Classics Illustrated, which I think everyone over a certain age has that. I have that, and it's a great version of it. But Jeff Wayne's musical version of War of the Worlds. If you love War of the Worlds, that is a fantastic version of it.
I do love War of the Worlds. I wrote that down. I'll check it out because up till now, I think the best version is Orson Welles.
Sure.
Because I think that's such a funny thing. My favorite thing about that is when like everybody was like, dude, like you knew this would like cause a panic, and he was like, I thought people were literate and had read the classical literature.
Right. I thought they would recognize this shit from their H.G. Wells. Yeah, it's funny. My wife does not enjoy prog rock, and once caught in traffic on the way back from San Diego, we listened to the entire War of the Worlds thing, and she's like, "That's great." That's like,
so it's prog rock, is what you're saying.
It's very much prog rock. I mean, it has a full orchestra.
Let me put 2 stars next to this real quick, so I make sure to pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's got a full orchestra, but it's got electric guitars, and it's very much in the Alan Parsons Project cinematic universe.
Nice.
So I
War of the Worlds
recommend
by
that.
David Gilmour.
Yeah, I think, believe it or not, I think David Gilmour plays on it.
Oh, dude, that was.
I know that some of the songs are sung by Justin Hayward from the Moody Blues. So I know there are some guys from the Moody Blues on there.
Dude, I've never heard of this. You just blew my mind, dude. That's awesome.
And you know what? We will take a moment and shout out the library. And you should go to, because you know why I found that album? It was in with the soundtrack albums at my local public library. Yeah. And flipping through, I went, what the hell's this? And I took it home and listened to it. And also, the original LP comes with these incredible paintings of some of the major scenes in it that are, again, as good as anyone has ever done that kind of thing. So I discovered so many things because of what I could take out at the library. And then of course you record it on cassette tape, so you have it forever.
Yeah, yeah. No, shout out to the library. Shout out to physical media. Yep. Shout out to albums, man. Like my girlfriend's super into music. So I buy her records of some of her favorite artists, and she's like, this is a whole new experience. Like they have, oh my goodness. She goes, at one point she pulled out some stuff and she goes, oh my God, they have all the lyrics listed here. And I was like, this is just how it
That was standard. That was a pretty actually a pretty common thing. Yeah, I try to make it just to make sure I do it now and again. I have about maybe 300 LPs that I've collected since I was, 8 years old or whatever. And I try to make, when I'm writing, I'm usually listening to MP3s. I'm usually streaming stuff off of my hard drive. But Sundays, I try to play LPs. Sunday afternoon when I'm hanging out, I put a Coltrane, Miles Davis, whatever, or Jerry Goldsmith or John Barry, like whatever I'm in the mood for. I like, I have all these albums. I want to listen to them. I want to maintain that. It's
either jazz or it's the Star Trek music or it's the James Bond music.
So, but James Bond music is pretty much my. If there's a dumb thing to be an expert on, that is my area of expertise.
Dude, I'm one of those people too, man. Like I'm like I have like I study James Bond theme songs in particular and what makes certain ones work and what makes certain ones not work. And the ones that work all have the same qualities, right? Like you have to have the right reverb on the guitar.
Yep.
You have to understand, you got to tie it into the theme, the womp, 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 womp. You got to play with those.
There's notes. Also always got to, you got to know how to write for a horn section.
Yes.
Yes. It's like there are a couple that don't particularly have a strong horn section that still work, like Live and Let Die works because George Martin deeply understands how the music works. He knows how to work with the theme. George Martin is also doing something really amazing in that soundtrack, which is because it's trying to be a blaxploitation movie. He's doing the math he's doing is John Barry plus Isaac Hayes equals the James Bond theme with wah-wah pedals. And a drum kit going, like it's something I'm obsessive about. I probably have like 300 covers of just the James Bond theme alone because I was always obsessed with it as a kid.
Heck yeah.
My favorite thing.
I love that you tie Barry and others like that. And Barry, and there was somebody else you mentioned that was a Goldsmith. Barry and Goldsmith. I love that you tied them in with Coltrane and Davis.
Yeah,
like that's
those are the poles of my tape. If there was one more direction to go, you'd throw in Tchaikovsky and Prokofiev. Like those are I also dig the classical music. I dig Gershwin. Like I do listen to
Tchaikovsky's
music.
one of the
Like,
best, man.
yeah,
Absolutely, dude.
like I do
Bon
also
Lake,
listen to rock and
brilliant.
roll. You know, I'm much more of a Who guy than I am a Beatles or Rolling Stones guy, because I'm more of a lyrics guy than I am a rock music guy.
Yeah.
And Townsend, very smart friend of mine, when I was a teenage nerd that did not like rock and roll music, but my friend who knew I liked soundtrack music and knew I liked classical music, how he got me to like rock and roll music is he picked up the vinyl of Quadrophenia and he said, let's go home and listen to this. And he's like, it's got leitmotifs, it's got themes that come up and then they're repeated two sides later and all. And it's like, oh yeah, this is a narrative work. This isn't just 2.5 minutes about I want to hold your hand. This is 70 minutes of thoughtful, interesting stuff about life. And that's not to denigrate the Beatles. We all also need songs about I want to hold your hand. But what Pete was doing was more interesting to me in terms of storytelling.
I agree. People always tell me there are like two types of people. I think this comes from Pulp Fiction by Tarantino, right? There's an Elvis people and there's like Beatles people, right? And I'm like, no, because what about the Stones? What about Led Zeppelin? What about the Who? There's more than two sides, and I think that's one of the biggest things we all need to know, right?
It's like, what about the people who are the Coltrane people, the John Barry people? You know, what about the people who are like, I don't, you know, the Elvis thing. I like Elvis, but it's not like anywhere near my favorite music in the world. And the Beatles to me are like 4 different bands, and I like the middle. I like the middle chunk better than I like the end chunk or the beginning chunk.
I can feel that. I can vibe that.
I like the Revolver Beatles. Those are my favorite Beatles. But but they don't resonate with me. I've always said this about the Beatles versus the Who. The Beatles are a couple of cute boys singing about how awesome it is to be a cute boy, and the Who is an ugly boy getting a handsome boy to sing about loneliness and isolation. You know, and Pete is not ugly. He is, but I bet people made him feel ugly when he was a little kid. Looking at him, as someone who people made me feel ugly when I was a little kid, I can totally see Pete was not a beautiful boy in the way that Roger was a beautiful boy.
That's why you play that guitar that certain way, man.
Actually, you know what, the thing where this is one of the most fascinating things to me, and it's about how vital background and origin stories are. The reason Pete Townshend's music is distinct from all of his peers. I read a book that he wrote of short stories. One of the short stories in there is about a lonely teenage boy who becomes friends with the local Spaniard, middle-aged Spanish guy who owns a fish and chips shop. And he's learning how to play guitar, and the Spaniard teaches him how to play flamenco. Think about the opening of Pinball Wizard. It's flamenco.
Yeah.
What Pete is doing with his guitar in rock and roll is he's playing friggin' Spanish flamenco music in rock and roll. And that's why it sounds like nothing else in the world, because this unique, I have to assume that story is autobiographical, just looking at his work. And it's the thing that makes him a completely unique guitar player, because his teacher was not a guy imitating Chuck Berry. Everybody else's guitar teacher was imitating Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
But the guy who taught Pete Townsend guitar never heard Chuck Berry in his life. He was playing Segovia, you know? And so you bring Segovia to rock music, to a 2.5 minute long pop song, and you got something completely unique. And that's fascinating. We are all our influences, and it's what we do with them and how we interpret them. I'm not a big Tarantino guy because I don't think he has enough to say about his influences. You know what I mean? There's a difference to me between
he references them, but he doesn't really
it's
dive
the family
into it.
It's Family Guy. He gives you the reference and he doesn't have anything to add to the reference.
Do you remember when this happened?
Yeah.
Do you remember this bit? Right? That kind of thing.
My joke about Tarantino is his movies are trivia contests, and your prize if you win is you don't like the movie. Like if you get all the references, you go, but that's not great. And my example is always George Lucas pulling the shot of the burning homestead with the kid standing in front of it from The Searchers and putting it on an alien planet in a science fiction movie is one thing. Tarantino taking the opening scene of The Dirty Dozen and recreating it in his World War II Commando movie. Well, The Dirty Dozen was already a World War II Commando. Like what you've added is that Brad Pitt, who is a step down from Lee Marvin, is cursing. That's it. That's the different thing that we've got in this scene. The scene in the Aldrich movie is 1,000 times better, and it's 1,000 times tougher. You know, even though Tarantino's using more violence and more profanity, the Aldrich movie is Dirty Dozen is 1,000 times tougher than Inglourious Bastards. You know, and what drives me up a tree about him, as someone who makes films, my favorite part of the process, the absolute best part of the process for me, is working with the composer, because the sun isn't going down. You're not losing the light. You're not rushed. You go to a fellow artist. You watch your movie together. You talk about where there should be music and what kind of music there should be. He goes off. She goes off. They create something fucking gorgeous that recontextualizes everything you've thought about your own movie. And they bring it back to life for you. Because at the time that it's inevitable when you wake up in the middle of the night with your idea for a movie, you write your movie, whatever, the whole process of making a movie is chasing a butterfly through a field with a net. And it just keeps, am I getting it? Am I getting it? Am I doing it? It's getting further and further away from me. And I swear to God, the first time you see it with the music, you go, nope, this is exactly what I had in mind. How the fuck did he do that? Somehow this is everything that I dreamed.
Yeah.
Because the composer has shaped it his way or her way into this beautiful, beautiful thing. And Tarantino sitting at home with his vinyl going, it'll be cool here. I'll play this clip from Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it took him 20 movies, or it took him 8 movies to actually call Ennio Morricone. I used to say, when I saw Kill Bill and it has all the Morricone in it, I was like, Morricone's alive. And he's in Rome. And I swear to God, he will pick up the phone when you call him and say, score my next movie, which he did, actually. Not from listening to me. But why would you miss the opportunity to create new soundtrack music that was yours, that spoke to your art and spoke to your vision? I wouldn't give that up in a million years. It's the best part of the process. And
David,
I know.
I can't wait till you come back on again, because we got even more to talk about now. Now that I know the alleyway that we have in common about music, heck yeah.
No, it's the soundtrack music. Everything that you before we got on, you said something about process, and I create a playlist for everything I write. And my favorite thing to write to is a genre that I call great music from shitty movies. Because you don't have the images from the shitty movie in your head when you're listening to it, or from movies I haven't seen, because it doesn't interfere in any way. And look, I'll listen to things that I recognize and that I love, but I particularly love, when I wrote The Shadow, I listened to Jerry Goldsmith's score from The Shadow. It's not a very good movie, but the score is fucking exquisite. I love listening to John Barry's score from The Specialist when I write. It's not a good movie. It's an incredible fucking score, But anyway, I'll let you wrap up.
All right. So we got Giant Size Savage Tales coming up. What else you got coming up, bro?
I got a bunch of things coming up. After Giant Size Savage Tales I don't know what'll hit next. I have a secret Dynamite project that hasn't been announced yet. That will be a 4-issue, 5-issue series. I think it's 4. Set on Barsoom. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell that part yet, but I'm telling it. And the thing I'm really excited about this year, which is also coming from Dynamite, is called Two-Fisted Fairy Tales. It is based very quickly on the true story that when I was a little boy, my World War II veteran novelist father told me all of the classic World War II, all of the classic fairy tales, excuse me, as World War II combat stories about himself. So the joke pitch for it is it's The Princess Bride meets Band of Brothers. It's a father telling his little son in 1970 about how he fought the big bad wolf and Rumpelstiltskin in the Black Forest in Germany in 1944 and 1945. Oh, I think we've lost our host. We are still recording, though. Let's see, what else could I talk about? Oh, and there will be a 150-page Elvira original graphic novel, and there will be a new Elvira series, which I also can't announce just yet. And that was a long silent spot, so you can make an edit there. There we go.
There you go.
Did you hear that last part?
What was that?
Well, I talked about a few things. Then I noticed you were gone. And then I smiled at the camera for about 5 seconds. And then I said, and that's a long silent spot so that you can make an edit right here.
Yes, I will make. Let me write down the time. Anyway, Thank you so much, David, for joining us tonight. My pleasure. I had a great conversation, and I have even more stuff to talk to you about. So sure. I know you got a lot of stuff coming up.
Yep.
And you're always.
I will reach out the next time. I mean, hopefully Amy from Dynamite will also reach out, but I have a bunch of stuff coming from them this year, and hopefully some other stuff as well.
Did you mention anything about the progress of Two-Fisted Tales?
I did. I pitched. I talked about Two-Fisted Fairy Tales, and right now where we're at is I have written 2 issues out of the 5, and Dave Acosta has drawn 4 pages of the first issue. So we're off to the races.
Heck yeah. Did you mention Nautilus Files?
I did not mention Nautilus Files yet, actually. We just got a new artist. Our original artist on that, unfortunately, had some personal family issues and had to drop out. And we just added Dexter Wee, who drew Thashang Origins for my buddy Ryland Grant, who's the sort of producer on this project. And it's funny, he sent me Thashang Origins, and it takes place during... First page is during the Boxer Rebellion in China at the turn of the century, and it's an old warship and a bunch of soldiers. And I'm like, well, this is exact. If he can draw this stuff, he'll be great with this. I just sent him my page of notes about what I think the Nautilus should look like in our story. Because obviously, since we are not working for Disney, we cannot use Harper Goff's glorious design from the 1953 movie. So we have to... It's a thin line between honoring what Jules Verne wrote, honoring what people expect the Nautilus to look like, and honoring what submarines actually look like in the real world. You know, it's a little bit of a triangulation of what the design will end up looking like. But I have high hopes for Dexter's designs.
Heck yeah. All right. Looking forward to it. David, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody go check out Giant-Sized Savage Tales in shops in April. The FOC is at the end of the month. And check out anything from David. Read the Elvira books from Dynamite. I promise you're going to love them. They are so much fun. And read Drawing Blood, by the way. Let's just say, I don't like Elvira, Robbie. That's fine. Read Drawing Blood. You obviously like comic books. If you like comic books, you should read Drawing Blood because it's great. It's a great book about.
If you like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Drawing Blood is sort of the crypto autobiography of the creator of the Ninja Turtles. It is, but it also isn't. But there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff there.
It's what if you took Kevin Eastman and David Avallone and crushed them together into one person through a Fly Cronenberg type experiment?
You know, that's what Kevin says, which is very sweet. He says, you know, this was my story before you came along, and it's become our story, and I'm very happy with that. And you know, yes, it's some of the trauma is Kevin, some of the trauma is mine, but it is the all that jazz or Fellini's 8.5 of comic books.
Bro, we just covered 8.5 here on the channel not too long ago, and I don't think my panelists quite got it quite the way I did. Some of them did. and I appreciate that.
I
I'm a big
that and
Fellini fan. I love Italian cinema in general.
Yeah.
Like I love Italian.
My final written thesis as a film student was about how 8.5 and King Kong are the same movie.
Bruh, a movie about making a movie.
Well, both movies start with the director telling you, I want to make a movie like this. Both movies end with the director not having made that movie, but the movie that he described to you, Carl Denham starts out saying, I want to make this Beauty and the Beast thing. And then everything goes out of control and he stops filming the movie and he picks up a gun and all that kind of thing. Guido talks about this movie about memory, about who we really are, about facing the demons of your past, about understanding, do you love people, do you not love people? And that is the movie that you've just watched. So that was my thesis, that Guido and Carl Denham go on very similar journeys. And if you love it, one more recommendation, if you love Italian cinema, the most pretentious thing I think I've ever put in a comic book, and boy, that is a high bar for me, is the second arc of Betty Page. The trade paperback, I think, is called Model Agent. She goes to the Cannes Film Festival and meets Vittorio De Sica because I could not help myself. I wanted to write about the father of Italian neorealism when he was a nice old man making incredible movies. And so she has a brief interaction with Vittorio De Sica on about 4 pages of that book.
Heck, David, next time I think we dive into something I think is a really significant film. Maybe you should join us for a PCP movie night. We go on for usually like an hour and a half. Usually I say an hour and a half. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours where we just dissect a movie, but it's always fun. And dude, I knew I would love talking to you about movies on our first conversation. So yeah, dude. I wish I would have known what you said, the comparison between King Kong and 8.5. I wish I would have known about that before I did that show, because then I would have blown everybody's minds. They would have been like, whoa.
It was something that I was thinking about. For a long time, I've said they're my 2 favorite movies, sort of neck and neck with each other. That still shifts over the years. There are a lot of other movies I love. You know, I have a top 100, not a top 10, but and, you know, if you read my comic books, you can very quickly figure out what my favorite movies are. It's not very mysterious, but yeah, I love coming on a podcast and talking about movies. My only disclaimer is maybe if it's something 50 years old and everyone that worked on it is dead, but Tarantino is one of the rare exceptions where I will talk smack about a living artist.
We'll bring you on when we talk about Hateful Eight, so you can do your whole Hateful Eight. I made it through the first 4.
No, I made that exact same joke. I turned it off when it was the Hateful 4. I did not get as far.
That's why I said that.
I did not get that far. But no, I'll talk about anything I love. But don't ask me to come on and talk about Christopher Nolan.
Okay, we no Tarantino, no Christopher Nolan. I got those notes written.
Ridley Scott, I'll talk about 50% of his movies. The other 50% I will not speak publicly about.
We do a lot of movies sometimes, like that are like from the 60s and 70s and even beyond. So I'll call you for the right one, bro.
Yeah, I'll do. Again, I'll talk about the movies from the like I'm not worried about hurting Douglas Sirk's feelings. Yes. But I think it's a little shitty to speak ill of your colleagues when they are living. We're all out here trying to make stuff, and it's hard. I am willing to talk smack about guys like Ridley Scott, Nolan, and Tarantino only because I don't think enough smack is spoken about them, and someone has to. But
they're enjoying the fruits,
and they can take
the fruits of their success right now. As we,
it always cracks me up when I express one of those opinions and people get up on their hind legs about it, and I'm like, Ridley Scott would not be this mad at me. You realize that, right? He would go, hey, man, to each his own. Like, you can't do this for a living and get that easily.
I resisted everything within myself, David, being like, Christopher Nolan has never made a bad film. But Christopher Nolan would disagree with me on that. Like, I guarantee it.
Probably he would.
He would be like, well, Insomnia is not as good as the original, which I would agree with.
Sure.
So yeah, there it is. So I'm just happy that people like Christopher Nolan are making films today, and it's not just the Russo brothers. But we're bringing everybody in, man.
Everybody has a right to make their thing, man. Like, I don't want to stop anyone from doing what they do. I'm glad that everyone makes their movies and people go see them. It's just, I think one of the greatest things you can come to in your old age is getting that not everything is for you, and that's totally cool. I'm a big Superman fan, and I watched the first season of the Melissa Benoist Supergirl show because it was a Superman show, essentially. And I went, this is just too much of a CW show for tween girls. And tween girls absolutely fucking deserve. That's who you should make a Supergirl show for. You should not make it for 50-year-old men, which I think I was at the time it came out. I am not the audience you should be tailoring this for. So make it a soap opera, man. Like I'm not mad at you for doing that. There are people.
And just because you're a 50-year-old man who doesn't like the project doesn't mean that it's not for somebody else. And that's one of the things I love about you and your opinions on things.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I don't like, and some of that stuff. Look, I love Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, the TV series. That's absolutely made for teenage girls and little girls. Still great. I love it. I love My Adventures with Superman on HBO Max. It's another fantastic, absolutely made for little girls. I still love it, but that particularly teen CW vibe does not resonate with me, and that's cool. Let them have it. I can walk away from it. I can it does not have to be for me. Not
I get
everything.
That all the time in my shop, man. People are like, man, dude, that Grant Gustin Flash series, greatest thing ever. And I go, you know what? That wasn't my favorite thing. Yeah. I'm glad you like it. Let me take you to some Flash comics I think you'll really like.
Right. So, and that's what and that's also, if they can be a gateway drug to I told the story before, but I discovered the Fourth World. I was familiar with Kirby's work in comic generally. And honestly, when I was a kid, and I think this is a really common story, his work was too extreme for me. It was too like, whoa, Jesus, calm down, man. What the fuck? Why is everything so amped up? Why is his hand so big? That thing. And I had a friend that was about 5 years older than me who got tired of hearing me rant and rave about Star Wars and the Micronauts. And he said, I'm going to show you the real shit, man. And he gave me the Fourth World comics to read. He actually gave me issue 7, The Pact.
Bruh, that's the best one.
He gave me that one to read first, and I read it, and it blew the top of my head off. And I said, this is the greatest comic book anyone's ever written. I want to read all of this. But the thing is, it didn't make me not like Star Wars and the Micronauts. I definitely saw all of the things Bill Mantlo had lifted from Star Wars and Jack Kirby to make the Micronauts. But it was still fun. It was still fine. I didn't have to hate the one thing to love the other thing. But I think that's the best thing. When someone tells you they love a thing and you know that it's a ripoff of another thing, it's not your job to say your thing sucks. It's your job to say, let me show you the real shit. You like Star Wars. There's this fucking Kurosawa movie, Hidden Fortress. Gonna blow your mind, man.
Exactly. Yes.
Did I tell you, and then I'll let you go. Did I tell you my favorite trivia thing from Star Wars ever? And I think I am the discoverer of this. I know I added it to the IMDb.
You're such a nerd, David. I love that. You're like, I have an IMDb. I can do this.
When Darth Vader is strangling that dude on the Death Star, what is he in the middle of saying? It's the wittiest thing George Lucas has ever put in a movie. Your sad devotion to that ancient religion hasn't helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes or help us find the rebels' hidden fortress. He's literally saying the title Hidden Fortress. And it's like Darth Vader. And it's like Darth Vader is going, dude, we are not saying Hidden Fortress out loud in this movie. We can say a lot of things in this movie, but we are not naming the Kurosawa movie. It's like if someone in The Magnificent Seven is like, wow, we're almost like Seven Samurai. Don't say samurai. Do not fucking remind the audience of what we're lifting from here.
Dude, I never even thought about that because when I first heard that Lucas pulled from Kurosawa, right? Yeah. Like back when I was a teenager in the 90s, that was like at the time of the re-release of A New Hope and stuff like that. Yeah. And that was the first time I ever watched Kurosawa. Right. And I remember watching Seven Samurai and being like, this seemed like Seven Like the Magnificent 70, y'all, with
Right.
Yul Brynner. This is a Yul Brynner film. Like, what's going on, man? This is a Clint Eastwood film, Yo Jimbo. I don't know what's going on here, man. This is crazy.
Right. And I love that stuff, and it always makes me but yeah, like the 100th time I watched Star Wars, I just went, holy shit, that guy was about to say Hidden Fortress. He gets as far as Fortress. And the thing is, if you look in the script, it's written out. You can see Hidden Fortress. Like, he doesn't get interrupted before he gets the tress out. And I went, that George Lucas is not a particularly witty guy. And that is a witty fucking thing to do.
Yeah.
Of like, nope.
That's so meta.
We are not saying Hidden Fortress out loud in this movie. That would be bad. But anyway,
what he could have done was just rip off a scene and have the music from Hidden Fortress hit at the same time, and then played some Jungle Boogie over it. Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
All right, David, we love you. Did you plug your Patreon yet? I know you're on Patreon.
I did not plug I can send you the link if you want to add it to the page or whatever. But I'm very easy. The greatest thing about having an unusual name that you got made fun of for in grade school is I can now be very easily found on Google. Take that, Tom Callahan. No one can find you. I can be
Smith up yours.
Yeah. My Nelson Muntz was named Tom Callahan. And it's one of the most anonymous names in the world.
That sounds like the bully in a Stephen King novel.
He absolutely was the bully in a Stephen King, and exactly like the bully in a Stephen King novel. When I thought of him for the first time in 20 years, when I was 40 or whatever, 35, I went, oh my God, that kid had such a sad. Like, now that I think about it, his parents were probably beating up on him. His father was probably a drunk. Like, his behavior is so abused child behavior, and I'm sorry I didn't know that at the time. Not that I could have done anything for him, but I see him in a new light as an adult of like, oh yeah, that didn't just pop out of him. He needed to beat me up because I was happy, because I had nice parents and I was well adjusted. Like, that's what upset Tom Callahan. Anyway, all that to say, David Avallone, very easy name to Google find. I am on the Patreon. I have a free level that gets you a newsletter every week, and I have $1 a month level that at least gets you something. I have, I think, $1, $3, $5, $10, and $20 levels that all get you various bonuses and access to other things. And if you're interested in making comic books, I am writing a book about how to write comic books, or rather how I write comic books, because I think art's instruction is always very idiosyncratic and personal, and it is bad to portray your way as the way. This is my way. These are my best practices. If they help you, fantastic. But the prologue is on the free side, and the first chapter is on the paid side, and there will be some like 9 or 10 chapters. And I'm taking it all the way for like, it literally, the first chapter is the idea, the second chapter is the outline, the third chapter is the script, the fourth chapter is working with artists, working with letters, working with colorists, working with editors, and then there's going to cons and promoting yourself online and all that. So I try to cover the entire breadth of the life of a single comic book.
Yeah.
As it passes from my brain onto the page, into print, and into the world, and then how I try to sell it to people, including going on podcasts.
The shortest chapter of that novel is going to be working with the editors. It's just say no.
Yeah.
No, do it anyway.
I have great editors, though. That is the Mel Brooks advice. Yeah. Take notes. Say, oh, absolutely, you're right. I'll do all of this, and then throw the good notes in the garbage and do what you were going to do.
That's how we got such classics like Blazing Saddles and The History of the World and Spaceballs. Everybody,
and also the Elephant Man.
Yes, he was a producer on that. Yeah. Dude, a movie that Mel Brooks produced that I think is, and he starred in, that I think is so undersold and underappreciated, To Be or Not to Be. That movie, genius. I think it's the most dramatic performance of Mel Brooks's career.
I think people underrate it because it's a remake of an equally great movie. So, like,
it's true.
I think people judge it against the Jack Benny movie, which is a little unfair. Which was also made during the period, so it has a different. But I love that movie. I like Life Stinks, actually. I think that's another.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. I think
that's a really underrated movie. But anyway,
maybe we should bring you on for a Mel Brooks movie. All right, we're zipping out. I told David 30 minutes, and look where we are.
2 hours. Like, it kind of happens. It's fine.
It does, but I'm going to check out Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. I got that note written.
Please do, and write me an email. Tell me what you think of it. I'd love to hear about it.
I will, dude. All right, everybody go check out all of David's work. We love you. We're dipping out.
Thanks, brother.
Station Pop Pop.